My name's Freya Rivera, and I'll never forget the moment they gutted my career like a fish on a Silicon Valley chopping block. It was a Wednesday, the kind of gray morning where the Bay Area fog clings to your skin like regret. I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room at Nexus Tech, the tech firm where I'd poured 7 years of my life into project management. 7 years of 14-hour days, of skipped dinners with my dad, who's battling Alzheimer's, just to keep the company's flagship app from crashing like a bad startup pitch. I was 45, staring down a $50,000 bonus I'd already mentally spent, Dad's memory care facility, a new roof for his Sacramento house before the rains hit. Then Mike Larson, my boss, walked in with an HR drone named Karen, who looked like she'd rather be auditing spreadsheets than souls. "Freya, effective immediately, your position is eliminated," Karen said, her voice flat as a dead iPhone battery. She didn't meet my eyes, just tapped her pen like she was checking off a grocery list. Mike, though, God, that man. He sat across the table, his Stanford grad smirk curling like he'd just sold a failing app for millions. His tie, some overpriced navy thing with tiny gold circuit boards, screamed, "I'm untouchable." I wanted to yank it straight and choke him with it. "Restructuring," he said, like it was a buzzword he'd practiced in the mirror. "It's just business." Business. Like bleeding my weekends dry for his quarterly reports was just a hobby. Like the $50,000 bonus, money I'd earned dragging his team's deadlines across the finish line, was just pocket change to him. I stood, my jaw so tight I thought my teeth might crack. "Severance?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Karen chirped, 2 weeks pay, standard package, assuming no issues. Issues. Like I'd been the one botching client demos while Mike took credit for my team's code. I grabbed my bag, fingers numb, and walked out past cubicles where colleagues suddenly found their monitors fascinating. My desk, my home for 7 years, sat there like a ghost town, post-its with API keys, a photo of Dad from before his memory started slipping, a chipped mug that said, "Keep coding." I swept it all into a cardboard box, each item a shard of a life I'd built. The elevator ride down felt like sinking into quicksand. Back home, I collapsed onto my couch, a bottle of cheap Cabernet in one hand, a half-eaten burrito in the other. My tiny Oakland apartment smelled like regret and microwaved beans. I'd given Nexus Tech everything, my 30s, my sleep, my chance at a family, to keep Dad's care funded and his house standing. And for what? To be tossed out days before a payout that was mine by right? I stared at the ceiling, rage bubbling like a server overload. Mike thought he'd won, thought I'd slink away like a fired intern. But he didn't know me. Not yet. I wasn't just Freya Rivera, the loyal employee. I was the woman who kept receipts, and I was about to make him choke on every single one. I woke up the next morning with a headache that felt like someone had run a debug script on my skull. The wine hadn't helped, but it had dulled the edges of yesterday's betrayal just enough to let me sleep. My Oakland apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and the distant wail of a BART train. I dragged myself to the kitchen, brewed coffee strong enough to wake a coma patient, and stared at the cardboard box of my office life, now sitting on my thrift store table like a tombstone. I couldn't touch it, not yet. Instead, I rummaged through the chaos of my life, looking for something, anything, to make sense of the void Nexus Tech had left. That's when I found it, buried in the bottom drawer of a desk I'd shoved into a corner when I moved in. An old manila envelope, edges yellowed like an ancient bug report. My original employment contract from 2015, back when Nexus Tech was a scrappy startup and I was a 30-something dreamer betting on their vision. I'd negotiated hard back then, fresh off landing a $10 million client that saved the company from folding. I unfolded the pages, the legal jargon hitting me like a stack trace error. And there, on page 6, section 12B, was my lifeline. If employee is terminated without cause, she shall be entitled to 10% of the company's net quarterly profit in the quarter of termination, in lieu of standard bonus and severance. I blinked, reread it, my coffee going cold. 10%. Not of my department's budget, not my bonus pool, the company's entire quarterly profit. I laughed, a raw, unhinged sound that echoed off my peeling walls. Back in 2015, the founders had souls, believed in loyalty over stock options. They'd let me slip that clause in, a nod to the exec's golden parachutes, because I'd just secured a game-changing safety compliance deal. Mike, with his circuit board ties and corner office ego, wouldn't have read it. He barely read client emails unless I highlighted the action items. But I just found a grenade, and it was labeled with his name. My heart raced as I did the math. My team had closed a $45 million deal last month unannounced, still under wraps to keep competitors guessing. The profit margin was obscene. Whispers in the office pegged it at $42 million for Q3. 10% of that? $4.2 million. Not a bonus, not a severance, a life-changing sum that could wipe out Dad's medical debt, fix his house, maybe even let me breathe for the first time in years. Mike thought he'd screwed me, thought restructuring was a clean getaway. But this clause was my flamethrower, and I was ready to burn his yacht to the ground. I grabbed my phone, hands steady for the first time since the firing. I needed a lawyer, someone who'd eat corporate sharks for breakfast. By noon, I was in San Francisco, sitting across from Rachel Kim, a litigator Yelp called a pit bull with a law degree. Her office smelled like burnt espresso and defiance, and I knew I'd found my weapon. Rachel Kim's office was a chaos of legal pads, coffee stains, and a single cactus that looked like it had survived a nuclear winter. She was short, wiry, with a tie that screamed, "I don't care," and eyes that could spot a lie from across the Bay Bridge. I slid my contract across her desk, the clause highlighted like a bug in a codebase. She scanned it, her chewed-up pen tapping a rhythm that matched my pulse. "Ironclad," she said, voice sharp as a server crash. 10% of quarterly profit if fired without cause. They signed this when their CEO still had a moral compass. I exhaled, the knot in my chest loosening for the first time since Mike's smirk burned into my retinas. "So, I've got them?" I asked. Rachel's grin was a warning shot. "You've got a shot, Freya, but they'll fight dirty. They'll claim cause, insubordination, incompetence, whatever sticks. Expect fabricated emails, doctored reviews, anything to void this clause." My stomach twisted. I could already hear Mike's voice, smooth as a bad-pitched deck. "Freya's been a problem for months, misaligned with our vision." Vision. The man couldn't align his own tie. Rachel leaned forward, her chair creaking. "We need a paper trail. Pull every email where leadership praised you, client feedback, awards, anything proving you were their golden goose. Make it impossible for them to paint you as dead weight." I nodded, my mind racing to the Google Drive folder where I'd saved every great job email, every performance bonus, every client thank you. 7 years of being Nexus Tech's workhorse, and I'd kept the receipts. "And the motive?" I asked. Rachel's eyes gleamed. "Money. They asked you to fatten the executive bonus pool. If we can prove a pattern others fired before payouts, we've got leverage." I left her office with a fire in my gut, not the chaotic rage of Wednesday night, but something sharper, like a coder debugging a critical error. I needed an inside ally, someone still at Nexus Tech who'd seen Mike's playbook. Sophia Alvarez was my first call. She'd been my right hand on the $45 million deal, a junior project manager with a chip on her shoulder and a knack for spotting corporate BS. We met at a taqueria in Oakland, the kind where the salsa burns your soul and the booths hide your secrets. Sophia was already there, clutching a horchata like it was a lifeline, her eyes sparking with anger. "They said you quit," she hissed. "Voluntarily. Like you'd walk away from a $50,000 bonus." I slid into the booth, my laugh bitter. "Mike's already redecorated my office, hasn't he?" Sophia snorted. "He's got a new espresso machine shaped like his ego." Her voice dropped. "Freya, it's bigger than you. They fired Paul from finance, 2 project leads, and Lisa from compliance, all right before bonuses. Mike's bragging about how lean the Q3 numbers will look for the board." My blood ran cold. A pattern. Just like Rachel said. "And that $45 million deal?" I asked. Sophia's eyes darted around, then locked on mine. "Closed the day after you left. It's not public yet, but it's spiking the profit margins. Mike's counting it for Q3. I gripped my glass. They'd cut me right after I'd handed them a gold mine. This wasn't just greed, it was a heist. Sophia's words hit like a Stack Overflow error, each one rewriting the code of my anger into something colder, more precise. I leaned across the taqueria table, the smell of cilantro and betrayal thick in the air. Sophia, I need proof, I said, voice low. Emails, memos, anything tying the firings to that deal or the bonuses. Her eyes widened, but she nodded, her jaw set like she'd been waiting for a fight. I'll dig, she said. Personal email only, encrypted. I'm not getting burned. I smiled, the first real one in days. You've survived Mike's team-building retreats. You're bulletproof. Back home, I paced my apartment, my laptop glowing like a war room console. Rachel's warning echoed. They'd claim cause to kill my contract clause. And sure enough, 3 days later, a letter arrived from Nexus Tech's legal team, printed on paper so smug it practically wore cufflinks. It claimed I was fired for repeated insubordination and failure to meet strategic objectives, backed by 3 performance warnings, 2 improvement plans, and a final review, all signed by Mike. I stared at the documents, my pulse hammering. I'd never seen them. Not one. If I'd gotten a warning, I'd have framed it next to Dad's hospital bills as a reminder of what I was fighting for. The dates on the warnings, June 10th, July 15th, August 22nd, screamed lie. I remembered June 10th. I'd brought donuts for the team after we hit a deadline early. July 15th? I was in Seattle, closing a client deal Mike took credit for. August 22nd? I was on a call with Mike, who mispronounced agile methodology 3 times while I bit my tongue. These weren't reviews, they were fiction, slapped together by someone who didn't know a tab key from a spacebar. And the signatures? Mike's, not mine. Greasy, loopy, like he'd practiced it for TED Talks he'd never give. I called Rachel, my voice steady despite the rage clawing my chest. They're forging documents, I said. She let out a whistle, sharp as a bug alert. Bold. Stupid, but bold. If we can prove those were created after your firing, they're toast. I paused, a memory sparking. Mike never wrote his own reviews. He'd email templates to his assistant, Tara, and tell her to make it sound leader-y. If she wrote these, they're on his laptop or the shared drive. Rachel's voice turned predatory. Get me the original files. Word docs, not PDFs. If the metadata shows they were created post-termination, we've got a guillotine. I texted Sophia, my fingers flying. Need the original warning docs from Mike's drive. Check exec_confidential or similar. He's too lazy to hide them well. I held my breath, knowing Sophia was risking her job. But I also knew she was pissed at Mike's smugness, at the way he dismissed her ideas while stealing mine. If anyone could pull this off, it was her. I poured another glass of wine, not to drown the pain but to toast the storm coming. Mike thought he'd buried me. He didn't know I was about to dig up his lies and light them on fire. Sophia's text came at 1 a.m., a digital Molotov cocktail lighting up my phone. Got it. You're gonna love this. My heart slammed against my ribs as I opened the attachments for Word documents, the original warnings, pulled from a shared drive folder Mike had named exec_confidential_23. The man who couldn't mute a Zoom call thought a number suffix was Fort Knox. I opened the first file, my laptop screen casting a blue glow across my Oakland apartment. Metadata, top right, created October 5th, 9:47 a.m. I was fired October 4th. Every document, October 5th, timestamps staggered like a sloppy intern's copy-paste job. They'd forged them after I was gone. I laughed, a wild, unhinged sound that probably woke my neighbor's cat. This wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a cannon. I forwarded the files to Rachel, then opened Sophia's next attachment, a Q3 earnings spreadsheet marked internal use only. It listed the $45 million deal my team closed, projecting a $42 million net profit for the quarter. My 10%, $4.2 million. That wasn't a bonus. It was a new life, Dad's Alzheimer's care paid, his house saved, maybe even a chance for me to stop running on fumes. I stared at the number, my chest tight, until Rachel called, her voice electric. Freya, this is it. Timestamps don't lie. They backdated those warnings, and we can prove it. I was still reeling when another email landed, this one from Paul, the finance guy who'd been fired days after me. Paul was the kind of guy who alphabetized his spreadsheets and drank decaf, but his message was pure fury. Heard what happened. I've got files you need. They fired me after I flagged Q3 revenue tricks. Let's talk. We met at a greasy diner off I-880, the kind with coffee that tastes like regret and waitresses who call you sugar. Paul looked like he hadn't slept since the dot-com bust, his tie crooked, fingers twitching against his mug. They fudged the $45 million deal's revenue, he said. Booked it all in Q3 instead of spreading it to Q4, juicing the profit for bonuses. I flagged it, got shut down, then got the restructuring boot. He slid a USB across the table, his hands shaking. Original projections, CFO emails ordering the tweak, my backups before they locked me out. I took the drive, my pulse racing. This wasn't just about me anymore. Mike and the CFO were rigging the books, firing anyone who'd notice, me, Paul, others to pad their payouts. I emailed the files to Rachel that night. She called within an hour, her voice like a coder spotting a zero-day exploit. This is a nuke, Freya. SEC-level trouble. They'll settle to avoid a review. I leaned back, the weight of it sinking in. Mike thought he'd erased me, but he'd left a trail of digital breadcrumbs. I wasn't just fighting for my money now, I was dismantling his empire, one lie at a time. Rachel and I didn't rush. We planned like coders debugging a million-line program, every step deliberate, every variable accounted for. Let them think they're safe, I told her, my voice steady as I sipped coffee in her cluttered San Francisco office. Let Mike strut around like he's untouchable. Then we hit them. Rachel grinned, her eyes glinting like she was about to crash a server with a single command. A meeting, she said. One room, their whole C-suite. We show the forged documents, Paul's files, and watch them choke. I nodded, feeling the calm before a storm surge. This wasn't revenge anymore, it was surgery. 2 days later, a courier dropped off an envelope from Nexus Tech, reeking of corporate panic dressed up as generosity. A $200,000 goodwill payout, no admission of fault, just a polite request to sign an NDA and vanish. I laughed so hard I spilled my coffee. They thought I'd settle for scraps when I held a $4.2 million ace? Rachel scanned the offer, her smirk sharp as a bug fix. They're scared. They know we've got something, just not how much. Let's keep them guessing. Then Paul's USB became our trump card. His files showed the CFO's emails directing revenue to Q3, inflating the $42 million profit to juice executive bonuses. My firing, Paul's, the others, it was a cleanup to cut costs and silence questions. Paul's affidavit, sworn and notarized, laid it bare. He'd been fired for flagging the fraud. I felt a pang for him, quiet, spreadsheet-loving Paul, who'd only wanted to do his job right. I added a note to my plan. Whatever I got, he'd get a piece too. Sophia kept feeding me gold. Another text, another file, a memo from Mike to the board, gloating about streamlining headcount to optimize Q3 optics. Optics. That's what I was to him, a line item to delete. But Sophia's loyalty, Paul's courage, they were my firewall. I called Rachel, my voice like steel. Set the meeting. No more letters. We go in, we show the evidence, and we make them bleed. She drafted the request that afternoon, a single paragraph that hit like a DDoS attack. Per Freya Rivera's contract, Section 12B, we demand payment of 10% of Q3 net profit for her termination without cause. We are prepared to discuss documentation supporting this claim. The response came fast, a meeting scheduled for Monday, their boardroom, all glass and ego. I spent the weekend prepping, pulling emails from clients praising my work, awards from Nexus Tech's own Excellence program, even a thank you note from Mike himself, back when he needed me to save his ass on a botched demo. Each file was a brick in the wall I'd build around them. I wasn't just Freya Rivera, the fired project manager. I was the woman who'd memorized every line of code in their game, and I was about to crash their system with a smile. The Nexus Tech boardroom was a sterile cage of glass and chrome, the kind of place that made you feel like a bug under a microscope. I sat across from Mike Larson, who fiddled with his $900 cufflinks like they'd save him from the guillotine I'd brought. His smirk was gone, replaced by the twitchy energy of a man who'd just realized his demo was crashing live. Next to him was Chuck Donovan, the CEO, a human glacier in a tailored suit, his eyes cold as a server room. Their lawyer, Vanessa, had the vibe of a realtor selling a haunted house, polished, but nervous. Rachel Kim sat beside me, her yellow legal pad a weapon loaded with career-ending bullet points. "Let's begin," Rachel said, sliding a USB across the table like a grenade with the pin half-pulled. Vanessa plugged it in, and the wall screen flickered. First item, performance documentation. 3 warnings, 2 improvement plans, 1 final review, all claiming Freya was fired for cause. Mike leaned back, a ghost of his old smugness flickering. "As they should," he said. "She challenged my leadership, disrupted team synergy." Synergy. I nearly laughed. The man who'd once called a database a data bucket was lecturing me on synergy. Rachel clicked a remote, and the screen showed a Word document's metadata. Created October 5th, 9:47 a.m. Freya was terminated October 4th, she said, voice smooth as a clean compile. This warning didn't exist until after she was fired. She clicked again, October 5th, 9:50 a.m., 9:53 a.m., all forged in a 45-minute frenzy. Vanessa's pen froze. Chuck's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to Mike, who looked like he'd swallowed a bug. Rachel didn't pause. Second item, affidavit from Paul, former finance analyst, fired after flagging improper revenue recognition on the $45 million deal Freya secured. His files show CFO orders to book Q4 revenue in Q3, inflating profits for bonuses right before Freya and others were cut. The room went still, the kind of silence that follows a server crash. Rachel leaned back. To summarize, Freya closed a multi-million-dollar deal, was fired without cause, then you forged documents to dodge her 10% clause. Paul was fired for questioning your math. Shall we continue? Vanessa opened her mouth, then shut it. Chuck stared at Mike, his voice low and lethal. You said this was handled. Mike stammered, it was, I thought. Chuck cut him off. Get out. Mike knocked over his chair, scrambling for the door, his cufflinks glinting like a distress signal. He was gone, and the silence he left was sweeter than any bonus. Chuck turned to me, his face unreadable. Miss Rivera, may we speak privately? Rachel glanced at me, I nodded. Vanessa started to protest, but Chuck's hand wave silenced her. The room cleared, leaving just me and the CEO. The war was won, but the price of peace was about to be set, and I was ready to name every cent. Chuck Donovan sat across from me, the boardroom's glass walls reflecting his icy calm. No apology, no small talk, just the cold math of a man who'd built an empire on stock ticks and layoffs. You're not here to burn us down, he said, sliding a thin folder across the table. You're here to get paid. I met his eyes, my heart steady. Correct. He opened the folder, revealing a contract for $0.2 million, the full 10% of Q3's $42 million profit, wired within 3 days of signing, plus an NDA thicker than a user manual. And Mike? I asked, tapping the table. Chuck's voice was flat. Gone. Breach of conduct. Effective now. I didn't smile. This wasn't joy, it was justice, cold and sharp, like a perfectly executed query. I leaned forward, my voice level. 2 conditions. 1. Paul gets a $300,000 consulting fee. He's not your scapegoat. Chuck's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. Done. I continued, 2. Sofia Alvarez gets a recommendation letter, personally guaranteed by you. No vague buzzwords, something that gets her hired. Chuck's lips twitched, not a smile but a concession. Protecting your people? He asked. No, I said. Punishing yours. Rachel stifled a laugh behind her legal pad. Chuck stood, adjusting his suit. My team will finalize by morning. Signatures by noon. We shook hands, his grip like a machine's, efficient, soulless. I walked out, the San Francisco skyline sharp against the fog, feeling like I'd just debugged a system and rewritten its core. The wire hit my account 3 days later, 9:12 a.m., a number so big my banking app stuttered. $4.2 million. I logged into Dad's care facility portal first, balance zeroed. Then the mortgage, the credit cards, the emergency loans I'd taken when his meds cost more than my rent, gone, like a bad commit erased. I called Dad, his voice shaky but warm. "Freya, did you rob a bank?" he teased. "No, just made a corporation pay its debts," I said. He laughed, and for the first time in years, I heard him, not the Alzheimer's. I wired Paul's $300,000, and he called, voice breaking, saying he'd never had anyone fight for him like that. Sophia got her letter, landed a job at a rival firm, and texted me from our old taqueria. They called me essential. Thanks to you. I could have stopped there, but some victories need a spotlight. On a quiet night, I opened a bottle of Napa Valley Pinot, worth more than my old desk, and posted a Glassdoor review. Beware last-minute restructuring before bonuses. This company trades loyalty for pink slips and ethics for optics. Creative accounting isn't just allowed, it's the playbook. No names, no lawsuit bait, but it went viral. LinkedIn messages poured in, strangers thanking me, the recruiter asking me to consult. I said I was busy. I was sitting on the deck of a Santa Cruz cabin I'd bought in cash, the ocean whispering, Dad on speakerphone laughing about seagulls stealing his fries. To everyone who's ridden this roller coaster with me, thank you. You've walked through my betrayal, my fight, my triumph. If this story hit you, smash that subscribe button and join us, where every battle scars tell a story of grit, heart, and rewriting the code of your own life. Keep fighting your truth, and I'll see you at the victory table.